Hi everyone, welcome to this special edition of the FR-8X Mild to Wild series. This one we're going to call the Wireless Edition. About a week ago, I released a little teaser video with the setup that I'm using currently, which is all wireless. In the past, if you wanted to play with the 8X and use amplification or use an arranger, you had to have a MIDI cable to connect you to the arranger, and you'd also need analog outputs. Two of them. So you'd have to have a wire, two wires, if you're in stereo, and this can be a bit of a pain, especially if you need to walk around a little bit or stroll while you're playing. Well, in my video I showed that you can do it. In this video, I've divided it off into three sections. The first one is all about the hardware, so you'll be able to see what hardware I'm using to recreate that setup. Section number two, it's all about the software. So you'll see the software that I'm using to accomplish what I showed in the video. The third one is basically how to put it all together. But this being a mild to wild series, I'm not going to give you just one way to do it, but four. So hang on tight. Let's start off with the first section, the hardware, right now. The first piece of equipment in my setup is the Roland accordion, of course. I use the FR-8X. The second piece of equipment is a Roland BK7M. This is my arranger of choice. Of course, it's connected to my homemade pedals. The one on the left controls the start, stop, intro, and endings. The one on the right side is the four variations that I can control with this setup. To make my accordion wireless from the analog point of view, I use the Guitaria GWS-28. I purchased this one because it was not too expensive, but more importantly, it's able to transmit a stereo signal. So it's able to provide separation from my left and right sides. To help capture the signals out of the accordion, I made my own custom cable. This cable had two prerequisites that I had to really work on. First, they had to be very low, so there's no way that I could bump them with my knee. And I took special care to do that. I even took special care to make sure that I used things like Loctite on the screws so they wouldn't come loose. And I trimmed the screws on the opposite side so they would never scratch the accordion. Of course, I set it up to be a stereo setup for left and right hands. The next item was a product called the Witty Master, made by CME. This is a company that made a very nice product. This is a Bluetooth wireless MIDI transmitter and receiver. It's very quick, surprisingly so, for a Bluetooth technology. You install one set into the back of the arranger and one into the accordion. Now I know that CME makes another kind of wireless MIDI transceiver, one that's a little bit lower, and I'm having that one shipped to me so that I can compare that with this one. Though this one is approximately 1.5 inches tall, and therefore it is possible to touch with your knee if you're moving around, it's still in a location that makes it fairly safe. The brains of the unit, or the control center if you will, is an iPad Pro. Mine is the 12.9-inch size with 1 terabyte of storage space. More than enough to last me a nice long time. I've also protected it by putting it into an OtterBox Defender case, which is probably the strongest cases you can get on the market. I really want to protect my iPad. They are expensive. To help hold my iPad on my stand, I used an iClip. Now, the Defender is one of the thickest protectors or cases on the market. And the iClip can just barely grab it, but it does hold it securely. My Bluetooth pedal of choice is the iRig Blueboard. It offers me 4 buttons and connectivity, again, via Bluetooth. To help capture all of these, if I'm going to be using it at home to create multi-tracks, I'll use my Mackie 1640i that's hooked into my DAW. Of course, that's a little bit large to lug around to location, so if you want something small and portable, I use a Zoom F4. And this is a multi-track field recorder with 6 inputs. My favorite, though, is to use a QSC TouchMix 8. This is a 12-channel input digital mixer, and it works very well. The QSC TouchMix 8 has the ability to record separate tracks onto a SSD that is connected to the back of it. I've purchased a 128 gig SanDisk, and this seems to be more than I'll ever need in terms of recording time and sessions. The Guitaria wireless receiver can be plugged into a stereo input on the mixer, and it works well. However, I want a little bit more control over the individual right and left channels. So therefore, I plug it into an adapter, and this seems to work just wonderfully. For me to be able to hear the output of the mixer, I use a small set of computer speakers. Altec Lansing makes this nice little 3-way setup, which includes a bass module and 2 stereo satellite speakers, and it's more than loud enough for my needs in the home. I like my iPad. It offers me possibilities that I wouldn't be able to have without it. The first piece of software we need is something that's called MIDI Wrench. MIDI Wrench actually shares signals between MIDI transceivers. The second piece of software we need is the controlling software for the iRig Blue Board. The third and most important piece of software we need is Songbook Plus. This is the software that allows me to view PDF files of my music and also allows me to control and reprogram both my accordion and the BK7M arranger. In this next section here, we're going to be taking a look at the 4 variations or the 4 sections of this setup. And just to make a couple of points. One, we don't have to use them all together at the same time. The versatility of this setup is such that I can choose to divide this off into 1, 2, or 3, or even all 4 sections and use each part as needed. For example, if I only need wireless analog, I can use that. If I need to use only wireless MIDI, I can use that. If I want to use just those 2 together, I can use that. So I don't have to use the whole package with the foot pedals and everything. But the versatility of it is such that I can if I want to, and I still have other options. I know there's going to be a couple of questions that I'm going to be asked, such as, is this a professional grade setup? There's a little bit of an opinion that I have about that. One is, no, this is not professional quality equipment, but can a professional use this in a pro gigging event? Depends. A lot of it's going to depend on their conditions, the surroundings, how much interference. Now, would I use this in a pro setup? Probably not, but I can see myself using it for fun and enjoying it. Now, here in my home, it works perfectly. How it will work outside the house depends on the environment, of course. Now, who is this really designed for? It's designed for me. I chose this setup because it worked for me in my environment, and it's reliable as far as my conditions here go, and it works well for me. So what I would like to do is to suggest that if you intend on using this in a pro environment, meaning a paid gig, you are a professional playing in a public forum, public location, yeah, you can go ahead and try it. But that's the key word here. Test it in your environment first. Make sure it's reliable. The last thing you want to do is to have your accordion drop out of analog mode and have out of wireless mode, I should say, and not have it amplified right in the middle of a song. So with that, let's move on to the 4 sections. To set up the analog wireless portion, we start off with our custom cable. Very simple. One on the positive, or one on the left, one on the right. And the next part is we bring that up here. I like to keep things a little bit loose, and to make sure that it's properly set up, let's start off by plugging in the receiver so that we get the proper length. What I did was set up a little piece of Velcro, over here. So here we have the fuzzy part, here we have the sticky part. So the hook and loop. So here we have the loop, here's the hook. And I just install it there. Make sure that this is laid down. I put a couple of pieces of Velcro. The first one I like to put right here. The second one, I like to just keep it loose a little bit. So we have a little bit of play, right? So it doesn't pull here and anything. And I put the second part right about here. The way that it's set up is that with a little bit of effort, I have the power button here, and it's easy for me to turn on from the side. On the mixer side, what I do is I use my little adapter, plug it into the mixer, plug this right in. I like to leave it right here. It works. Later on, I have this little vision of me putting some kind of little extensible arm and hooking it up and holding it like that. But it works now, so don't have to worry about that part now. And then I turn on the mixer, set my levels, and of course, before doing that, it has the on-off switch in the same place, right? And then we're all set to go. A little hint. I'll first set the levels on my accordion, the volume, to the normal way that I want to hear it. So if I plan on going strolling, it'll be about 3/4 volume in that area. And I'll set these gain knobs based on that level. That way I don't overpower them. And then we just have to make sure that we're using the same channels on both of our units. And once everything is turned on, I turn on the unit on the accordion, they sync, and we're ready to play. If you thought that setting up the Guitaria transceivers was simple, wait till you see this. The Ulitmate is even simpler. We simply plug in one set into the back of the BK7M. Make sure you appropriately put each one in properly. There is a transmitter and there's a receiver. The in and out arrows on the units itself will show you how to place them. Plug in a second set of Ulitimates into your accordion. Again, be careful. The longer one and the shorter one are different. One's a transmitter, one's a receiver. The longer one is the transmitter. Also make sure that you have the transmitter plugged in, connected to the receiver. The one powers the other. The next thing you do is we'll turn on the Roland BK7M. And after that, we simply turn on the accordion. The moment you see that, you have a connection. And then when I press my bass, it changes wirelessly. That's all it's to it. How to configure your Blueboard pedal to the iPad. We first need the application. By going to the apps store and typing in iRig Blueboard, it'll bring us to the appropriate application. This is the application that we need right here. Don't choose the other ones. Once it's installed, you can open the app. This will bring it up. This is the main screen. We need to set ourselves up in a controllable mode. So pressing the A button and then turning it on puts us in the mode that we need. We can see it flashing as it's searching. We then go and click on the tap here to connect your Blueboard. Find the appropriate one, click on it. Then we can go into the proper mode. Make sure that you are in control change mode. Very important. The next step is to choose the MIDI channel that matches the channel that your Songbook will be using. In my case, I chose channel 1. The next step is we're going to change the control channels individually. Make sure that these numbers are unique because we're going to set specific functions to each control channel. In my case, I chose 10, 11, 12, and 13. Once that is done, don't close the application. Let's open up Songbook. Go into the settings. That's that little gear icon. Let's go down to the foot pedal option. Choose the MIDI foot pedal. Make sure it's turned on. Make sure we're using channel 1, just like we are in the previous application. We then go down here under the freely configurable control change, and these are the settings that I've set. Button A, B, C, and D, you can tell are already pre-configured. Let's take a look at one of them to see how I configured one. Here I chose the appropriate controller channel. And when this changes to any value, as the iRig changes from 0 to 127, since both of them out, so if I choose that, we then select the action. In this case, for A, I want it to jump to the previous song, previous page. So the way I have it set up is A, previous page, B, next page, C, previous song, D, next song. Let's test this out and see if it works. Here's a song list. Let's choose this song. It's actually a book of exercises. I clicked on Open the Book. I then chose button B, which meant next page. Because I am in horizontal orientation, it shows me 2 pages at a time. When in vertical mode, it will show me 1 page at a time, but I can still zoom in if I want to. If you go to the end of the book and press page, next page, you'll go back to the first page. Clicking on D brings us to the next book. And again, next page, which is a B, a B again, press the B one more time. That's the A, one page back. B, one page forward. A, one page back. Let's go to the next song. Let's go one song back. One song forward. When we go into the more advanced setup, we're going to need intercommunication between the MIDI units, meaning we need bidirectional. They need to send and receive. And they all have to speak the same language on the same channel. We start off with the Roland, and let's set this one up. We go to Menu, scroll down to MIDI, look for Edit System, go to the Basic. Make sure that the receive channel is set to channel 1. This is the channel we're going to use for communication between the Roland and the iPad. The next thing that we need to do is to have the MIDI units, the MIDI master, if you will, the wireless MIDI, on the Roland and on the accordion have the ability to communicate with each other. To do that, we need the MIDI wrench. So let's go to the MIDI wrench application software. And what we'll do next is let's turn on our Roland first. And we're waiting for the Roland to boot up. After that, let's go into the settings on MIDI wrench. Let's scroll down to our Bluetooth MIDI. And we see that this one's not connected. Let's click on it and make sure it connects. The next thing we do, we want to turn on the accordion. Its MIDI master is also not connected. Let's make sure that they connect. You need to exit out of here. Before we do that, I want to show you some of the settings here. The important settings are to ignore MIDI active sense, ignore MIDI size X, ignore MIDI control change, ignore MIDI clock. The most important one, echo everything to all. It is this setting that allows us to share information going in and out between the two MIDIs, something that they would not normally be able to do. So now we have communication between Songbook and between the accordion and the Roland. And to help this application run in the background, make sure that we have the run in the background activated. What's important is that we do not close this app. This app has to stay open. So now we'll sort of minimize it. Make sure that we've closed that, by the way. Let's just minimize. And we have our two applications going right now. So we have the MIDI wrench and we have the Songbook. Let's bring up the Songbook at this point. And let's turn it to its vertical orientation. Now, here is the trick. For us to be able to program the Roland or to program the accordion, we have to have a separate song for each. Now what I've done is I've created, for example, let's choose, doesn't matter, anything. Let's choose this one because I just have that set up. This is to program the accordion, and I use this first page to kind of give me some notes. But it's the programming here that's very interesting. So if I click on the three dots, click on Edit Song. Here are the things that you need to do. You can give it a name. You can give it the name of the PDF. The stuff that's important is at the bottom. For me to be able to use that program, and I'll discuss this in a little bit later, we have to set the MSB, the LSB, and the PG change settings. Make sure that this is set to what it's supposed to be. Also, for this signal to be sent every time that this is loaded, we need to make sure that the send MIDI command on open is open. Now that's to program the accordion. When I flick over and move over to Besame Mucho number 2, which is supposed to reprogram the Roland 8X, it's supposed to load the performance set that I want. Now, I just want to explain this here for a second. Normally, when we have our performance list, we have our music assistant, and we can load our music assistants, and then we'd have a whole bunch of lists that we could use. Or if we wanted to, I can use the music assistant, and it just loads a whole bunch, 950, 60, 70 songs-ish. Well, here's a little secret. Let's go back. If I go to the menu, excuse me, let's go to performance list. Let's go to my February list, for example, and load that. The trick that I wanted to share earlier is we don't need to use the music assistant. We can use our own performance list and get away with using that. So now I've created my own performance list. Okay, what I'll do is just set it to this one for the sake of the test. Okay, so now we see that Jambalaya is highlighted. If I go back to my songbook and I click on Besame Mucho number 1, nothing happens on the BK. That's because this page is set up to modify the settings on the accordion. And if I go to the next page, we'll see that she's gone down and loaded the settings for Besame Mucho, including, if you will note, the intro and which variation I want to start with, as well as the tempo. Now I can go through the song, and then when I load the next item here, it's Never on a Sunday. And then when I go and load page 2, it's moved down to the second one. So we see that it has gone and worked from that side. Let's take a look at the other side now, from the side of the accordion. Now, I'm back onto the songbook page. And if I go to Never on a Sunday, we can see that it is changing. Let me go back and go to the next song. So this is Sissy Bone. Let's go to the Jambalaya settings. And we note that it is indeed changing. I'm now changing the BK. I'm changing the accordion. Now just by switching, you can tell that I am. And I can do this with the first page, if I go click on Bésame, and it goes back. If I close this page, I go very quick, as you can tell. And that works off the pedals. So what do those mysterious numbers mean? Actually, it's quite simple. Let's start off by taking a look at the accordion side, okay? Because that one's a little bit simpler. Let's take a look at the settings. Now, in my case here, you can see that I'm using a user program group. Set number 3, register number 5. If I take a look at my settings, the first number, the MSB number, it's going to be very simple. It's going to be either 0 or 1. 0 means to use sets. So if you want to use set number 1, 2, 3, whichever, that's where you set it here. If you use a number 1, it's a user program group. So your UPGs are identified by 001. Sets are identified as 000. The second represents the number of the set. So like in my case, I'm using 001, so it's a user program group. Number 3, because 0 is the first one, 001 is the second one, 002 is the third one. So if I go back here, you see I'm using UPG number 003. That would mean that I would have to be using an LSB of 002. The last one, super simple. This is the register number. So at the top is your first register. Down at the bottom, you have your 14th register. 000 is the first one. Second one, third one. So if I take a look over here, I need register number 5. So let's go back there and take a look at that in terms of the editing. So if this is the first one, second, third, fourth, fifth. And that's how you select your accordion setup. The LSB and the PG are the same thing in the sets, in that you're going to choose which set you want, which register out of that set. And that's all you need to know to program Songbook to send a signal to your accordion to reprogram itself. To get your BK7M to receive commands from Songbook Plus to change to different songs or change to different pre-programmed songs more specifically, relatively easy, and it's very similar to the way that we do with the accordion settings. Let's open up a song here. I'm going to click on the 3 buttons. I'm going to choose Edit Song. From here, if we take a look at the bottom again, we have our Bank Select 3 spinning wheels. The first one shows a 122. This is a very simple option. It never changes. If you want to update your Roland BK7M, the first number has to be 122. Now, let's talk a little bit about performance sets and the music assistant. In the Roland BK7M, there are 950-ish pre-programmed songs, and we can use those with a lot of variety. So what we can do is we can load the music assistant and then call them up from here. Meaning, the first song on the list would be identified with a 000 in the LSB and the PG range 000. If I wanted to go to the second one, third one, fourth one, and so on. But yeah, but how do I get into the higher ones? Because I know that this only goes up to about 127. Yes, it goes up to 127, but it goes up to 127 once, twice, 3 times. As a matter of fact, it goes up there, if I'm not mistaken, it goes up to 122. So we have 122 times 127, and that gives us the amounts of files that we need to access through the music assistant. A nice little secret is, though, if I use my own performance set, if I create my own performance set based on the songs that I want, meaning the rhythms, the tempo, the beginning and endings, as well as the variations that I want to start from, I can use them and access them from here too. All I have to do is, instead of using the music assistant to load that up, I load my own performance set from my own little USB key in the back. And it works identically. So let's say if I have 30 songs in a list, the first one would be identified again with 122, 000, and 000. The second one would be 001, third one would be 002, 003 would be number 4, and so on. So this is a really cool way we can use our own setup as well. And that's pretty much all you need to know about programming the BK7M from Songbook. First thing to turn on, iPad. Let's turn this off. All right, so what's the first thing we'll do? Oh, we're not going to do the foot pedal, because the foot pedal obviously is going to work in the range. It doesn't go anywhere. I want to test the range of the wireless and the wireless MIDI. So let's try that out. How do we do that? Let's bring up our MIDI wrench. Let's turn on whoa. Okay, that's not turning on. How unusual. No, not really. Always works better when it's plugged into something, right? Okay, so that's turning on. It's up and running. Let's go find the Bluetooth MIDI in here. And it's connecting. It's connected. There's the second one. It just gave me the symbol. And let me go back and done. And let's go into Songbook. This is showing me that it's changing. And how about from here? So the first one, let's see. Let's turn this up a little bit. So this is working. So that's working. Okay, so let's get this dialed in. Let me just turn that down. This goes here, here. This goes into the backing. This has no difference. Let me just try that. Okay, that's way too loud. We'll turn that down. That's working. That's working. Except we can crank that up just a little louder. Good. That's still a bit too loud here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the camera show us this area as it's changing. And of course, when the goes out of range, okay, what I'm going to do is it'll simply stop recording here. And that'll be a great way for me to know range. All right, so here we go. And off we go. All test good? That's changing. Okay, here we go, 20 feet. "25 feet, made it." Here come the stairs. Top of the stairs. Okay, we're gonna go toward the front door. Into the kitchen. And into the dining room, which is pretty much one floor above my little studio area. Does this work? Okay, going up to the second floor. Okay, so I'm in the upstairs now. If this makes it up here, I don't know. I'm in the master bedroom. Still on the second floor. I'm in the spare bedroom now. And we have 2 floors separating us as well as a lot of room. Let me go into my bedroom here. I'm in my bedroom. I've made it. Okay, here we go, downstairs. Made it back to the main floor. Back towards the downstairs. Downstairs. And Now I'm going to find out if it's still going here. Okay, so now I can tell you that the MIDI has disconnected, but this is still connected. So I'm dying to find out how much of this lasted versus how much that lasted. So the wireless MIDI didn't last, of course, that far. I didn't expect it to, but this is surprising me. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so we saw there were some surprises and there were some things happened that I knew they would happen. The Guitaria wireless for the accordion, they did very well. They actually went up through three floors, the basement, main floor, and the upstairs. And I walked all around. So we had multiple floors and all kinds of distractions, and it went right through it all. So I'm very confident with that in terms of a small area to stroll around. And I was definitely not line of sight, okay? The wireless MIDI. Now, we know Bluetooth is not meant for distance. I don't expect it to be, but it did really well, all things considered. Now, for line of sight, I bet you that thing can do 30, 40 feet easy, which is a really good strolling distance. And it actually went upstairs to the main floor and reconnected and worked for a little bit more before finally dying the moment I started touching the second story. So the moment I started going up more than a certain amount, they couldn't last, they couldn't take it. But in and around here, I think they're perfect. This is a very reliable system. The one thing that I did notice when it comes to these, the Guitarias, you've got to be super careful when you are gain staging them. The distortion that we heard was my fault. That was because they're just so sensitive that I just overtouched it a little bit and there was a lot of distortion. So bring them down a little bit and control the volumes through the faders and make sure that you're well below anything close to -5 to -10, and they'll serve you well. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you had as much fun watching as I did making this. For now, ciao.